When my daughter-in-law Rachel told me I should stay in the spare closet and out of sight during their luxury dinner party for high-net-worth clients in front of 12 millionaire investors, she had no idea she was dismissing the woman who had been secretly operating under the consultant identity E.M. Sterling for 22 years, whose unassuming appearance as a displaced elderly widow living in their cramped spare closet in Austin, Texas concealed my role as senior financial compliance auditor for the Federal Reserve Bank's Regional Investigation Division, with administrative authority over banking violations that could instantly freeze corporate accounts, trigger federal money laundering investigations, seize assets under suspicious activity protocols, implement compliance holds that prevented wire transfers, and whose burdensome elderly relative persona they mocked during their wealth management presentation, would soon transform into the Federal Banking Authority, whose violation reports either restore their financial institution licenses or permanently terminate their access to the U.S. banking system. All because the successful financial advisor who assumed his displaced mother-in-law represented an embarrassing liability during their exclusive wealth management showcase, bothered to ask why major banks treated me like visiting royalty during compliance reviews, why federal banking violations were mysteriously resolved within hours of my involvement, and why the most prestigious investment firms somehow always maintained perfect regulatory records while other financial institutions struggled with compliance issues and federal investigations that could take years to resolve and cost millions in penalties. Before we dive into this incredible story of financial arrogance meeting Federal Banking Authority and the wealth management empire my ungrateful family never knew existed, make sure to hit that like button, drop a comment, telling me about your worst experience with family members who treated you like a burden while living off financial advantages that your expertise helped them obtain, and subscribe so you never miss stories like this one about what happens when adult children assume elderly relatives are financial deadweight, only to discover just how catastrophically wrong they can be when family disrespect meets Federal Banking Compliance Authority that could change their business licenses forever, or terminate their access to the entire U.S. financial system based on how they chose to treat the woman whose banking expertise would make national financial news and whose response would become a cautionary tale about respecting elderly relatives whose true influence over modern banking systems isn't always visible until your accounts stop working and federal regulators start asking very uncomfortable questions about your business practices and compliance history. My name is Eleanor Margaret Harrison. I'm 72 years old, and this story begins on October 2024 when I made what seemed like a simple request to remain in the main living area during my son Michael's family dinner party, a routine family gathering that would reveal the true character of the daughter-in-law who had convinced my only child to relocate me to their spare closet, both of them. The most expensive lesson about dismissing elderly relatives whose quiet career in federal banking compliance had been ensuring that wealth management firms throughout Texas maintained proper regulatory standing, seamless audit process, and the kind of federal approval that determined whether financial institutions served high-net-worth clients or faced regulatory shutdowns that could destroy careers and eliminate millions in managed assets overnight. To understand how my son Michael Harris, a 49-year-old senior wealth management partner at Pinnacle Financial Advisors earning $330,000 annually plus substantial performance bonuses and client acquisition incentive, ended up watching his financial licenses suspended and his client accounts frozen within 72 hours of allowing his wife to banish his elderly mother to a spare closet, you need to know who I was before my carefully maintained image as a grateful widow accepting family charity concealed 40 years of federal banking authority and regulatory expertise that had elevated me from entry-level bank examiner in 1983 to chief compliance auditor for the Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas, a position that required top-secret security clearance and system access that determined regulatory approval for over 2,800 financial institutions throughout Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, and New Mexico. The story of my professional transformation from Eleanor Harrison, young college graduate with a degree in finance and economics from the University of Texas at Austin, to Eleanor M. Harrison, one of the most influential federal banking compliance experts in the southwestern United States, spans 4 decades of technological revolution, regulatory evolution, and professional achievement that most people never understand or appreciate until their comfortable assumptions about financial security meet the reality of federal oversight and banking compliance requirements. For 4 decades of distinguished federal service, I was Eleanor M. Harrison, dedicated banking professional at the Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas, starting as a junior compliance officer in 1983, when computerized banking regulations were revolutionary new technology and advancing through every level of regulatory responsibility until my retirement in 2022 as Chief Compliance Auditor for Regional Banking Oversight, a position that required advanced financial crime investigation certification, international banking coordination protocol, and system access that most people never understand or appreciate. My career had encompassed every aspect of banking compliance management, from basic institution auditing to complex multi-state regulatory coordination that determined whether financial firms operated legally, whether wealth management licenses remained valid, and whether high net worth client services met federal oversight standards that could affect millions of investors' financial security and institutional banking relationships. The breadth and depth of my federal banking expertise was extraordinary, encompassing not just domestic financial oversight, but international coordination that required understanding global banking regulations, money laundering prevention protocols, terrorist financing detection system, cross-border financial crime investigation techniques that protected the integrity of the entire U.S. banking system. My daily responsibilities included coordinating with Treasury Department officials, Homeland Security Financial Intelligence Unit, Internal Revenue Service Criminal Investigation Divisions, and international banking regulatory authorities who relied on accurate regional financial data for economic analysis, criminal investigations, and policy development that influenced billions of dollars in financial activity throughout multiple countries and jurisdictions. The scope of my federal responsibilities encompassed managing banking compliance across 5 southwestern states, coordinating with Treasury Department officials who needed accurate regional financial data for money laundering investigations and terrorist financing prevention, implementing security protocols that protected client privacy, while ensuring regulatory designing automated systems that monitored suspicious financial activity between state banking authorities, federal oversight agencies, and international banking network, and troubleshooting and compliance violations that could affect everything from individual investment accounts to regional banking stability that influenced federal monetary policy and billions of dollars in institutional investment decisions throughout the southwestern United States. My security clearance level, designated as Top Secret Sensitive Compartmented Information, or TSSCI, required annual background investigations, financial audits, polygraph examination, and psychological evaluations that ensured only the most qualified and trustworthy federal employees maintained access to banking systems that could affect national economic security, international financial stability, and federal monetary policy. The clearance process included extensive interviews with professional colleagues, federal banking officials, international regulatory authorities, and continuous monitoring that verified my continued reliability and commitment to maintaining the highest standards of professional integrity and national security protection. The technological evolution that I had witnessed and managed during my career was extraordinary, from manual banking oversight systems in local federal offices to sophisticated artificial intelligence platforms that could instantly verify institutional compliance, client account legitimacy, regulatory standing, and federal approval status across national networks that connected individual wealth management firms to global financial oversight patterns. I had been personally responsible for training over 200 banking compliance professionals in federal oversight protocol, regulatory security procedures, and investigation techniques that required both advanced financial expertise and deep understanding of banking law, federal monetary regulations, and constitutional privacy protections. During my 4 decades of distinguished federal banking service, I had personally overseen compliance audits for over 3,400 financial institutions, supervised regulatory investigations, involving 67 different wealth management firms across 5 states, coordinated with federal law enforcement officials who required accurate banking data for criminal investigations, and managed crisis response protocols during compliance failures that required immediate coordination between state banking authorities, federal regulatory agents, and international banking oversight organizations to ensure market stability while maintaining data integrity and client privacy protections that balanced public safety with constitutional financial rights. My position as chief compliance auditor meant that I possessed what was essentially master-level access to the Southwestern Regional Banking Oversight Network, the ability to implement compliance reviews, initiate regulatory investigations, coordinate multi-agency oversight, execute account freezes, implement suspicious activity monitoring, and troubleshoot violations that could instantly transform someone's financial institution from full federal approval to complete regulatory shutdown requiring extensive federal intervention and administrative review to restore through proper channels and verification process. The technological sophistication of modern banking oversight meant that my daily responsibilities included managing automated monitoring systems that tracked millions of financial transactions in real time, coordinating with artificial intelligence systems that detected suspicious activity patterns, implementing blockchain verification protocols that ensured transaction integrity, supervising quantum encryption systems that protected sensitive financial data while maintaining federal oversight capabilities, and managing machine learning algorithms that identified potential compliance violations before they affected market stability or client security. But perhaps the most significant aspect of my federal banking career was my role in developing and implementing the automated compliance protocols that determined how financial information flowed between state banking authorities, federal oversight agencies, wealth management platform, and international banking monitoring systems. I had personally written regulatory specifications that guided banking oversight for millions of Southwestern account holders, established coordination procedures between state agencies and federal banking authorities, and created investigation protocols that ensured consistent, accurate financial oversight across institutions that served both individual wealth management needs and national economic monitoring requirements. The federal banking infrastructure that I had helped design and implement served as the model for national financial oversight integration, with regulatory authorities in other regions consulting our protocols for guidance on compliance management, institutional coordination, and security implementation that balanced public financial safety with client privacy protections. My expertise had been featured in federal banking oversight publications, international regulatory conferences, and was consulted by financial institutions throughout North America, Europe, and Asia, who wanted to implement similar compliance systems and automated protocols that served both individual client protection and international financial security monitoring requirements. The Harrison Institute for Federal Banking Compliance, which I had established during the final years of my career at the Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas, had become the most respected financial regulatory training program in the United States, providing advanced education for federal banking officials, international regulatory and financial institution compliance officers who needed expertise in multi-jurisdictional oversight, security protocol implementation, and crisis response coordination that maintained market stability during regulatory failures and compliance emergencies. Our institute accepted only 12 participants annually through an application process, more competitive than federal banking positions, requiring extensive experience in financial regulatory oversight, international banking coordination, federal compliance investigation, before candidates qualified for consideration. Falzarin reflected both the specialized nature of our training and the career advancement opportunities that graduation provided for banking professionals seeking leadership positions in federal regulatory agencies, international banking oversight organizations, or private financial institutions, requiring the highest levels of compliance expertise and federal coordination capabilities. The waiting list for admission to the Harrison Institute extended over 6 years, with applications from senior federal banking officials and national regulatory authorities, seeking advanced compliance training, and financial institution executives responsible for maintaining federal approval and regulatory standing throughout multiple jurisdictions. We regularly declined applications from Fortune 100 financial executives who lacked the specialized knowledge of federal banking regulations and international oversight coordination that distinguished our program from general financial education and standard compliance training program. What made our program unique wasn't just the technical training quality, it was the federal coordination experience and professional networking opportunities that came with graduation from the most respected banking compliance education program in federal regulatory. Harrison Institute graduates received automatic consideration for federal banking positions that never advertised openings, gained access to our network of federal regulatory officials and international banking authorities, and could leverage our consultation services to build careers in banking compliance that would be impossible to achieve through traditional financial education and standard regulatory advancement. The advanced curriculum that we provided included hands-on training in federal banking oversight protocols, emergency response coordination during compliance failures, multi-jurisdictional financial investigation, international banking regulatory, quantum encryption security implementation, artificial intelligence compliance monitoring, blockchain verification procedure, and security implementation that protected client privacy while maintaining federal oversight capabilities, and international financial crime prevention that supported both individual account protection and national economic security monitoring requirements. Michael's comfortable life in his $1.8 million Austin home, which he considered evidence of his professional success and wealth management expertise, was actually dependent on the kind of seamless federal banking oversight and compliance management that I had been developing and maintaining throughout my entire career. The perfect regulatory standing that enabled his wealth management practice, the smooth federal approval processes that had qualified his firm for high net worth client services, the accurate compliance assessments that kept his licenses current, and the comprehensive regulatory protection that allowed his business to operate without federal interference, all depended on the kind of sophisticated banking oversight and federal coordination that required exactly the expertise I had been developing for over 4 decades. The Pinnacle Financial Advisors firm where Michael worked as a senior wealth management partner wasn't just any investment company, it was a federally registered investment advisor that required continuous compliance monitoring, regular federal audit, and strict adherence to regulations that I had personally helped develop and implement throughout the financial services industry. The firm managed over $2.4 billion in client assets, served 47 high-net-worth families throughout Texas and the South, and maintained the kind of pristine regulatory record that enabled them to attract millionaire clients and charge premium fees for wealth management services that distinguished them from firms struggling with compliance issues and federal oversight concerns. 1,000+ performance bonuses that often exceeded $85,000 came from managing investment portfolios for clients whose combined net worth exceeded, requiring federal oversight and compliance monitoring that ensured their wealth management activities met the highest standards of regulatory approval and investor protection. His success in attracting and retaining high net worth clients depended entirely on Pinnacle Financial's reputation for regulatory excellence and federal compliance that distinguished premium wealth management firms from those struggling with regulatory issues and federal investigation concerns. The luxury lifestyle that Michael and his wife Rachel had achieved included not just their $1.8 million home in Austin's exclusive Westlake Hills neighborhood, but also a collection of luxury vehicles including a Mercedes-Benz, membership in Austin's most prestigious country club, regular participation in high society events, European vacation homes, private school tuition for their future children, and the kind of financial security that required the regulatory protection and federal approval that only came from perfect compliance, standing and banking oversight approval that I had been maintaining throughout the financial services industry. Rachel Harris, formerly Rachel Elizabeth Montgomery, had achieved her own professional success as a senior marketing director at a Austin-based luxury goods company, before leaving her $95,000 annual position to focus on managing their social activities, luxury home, and what she considered the administrative burden of caring for Michael's elderly mother. Her background in luxury marketing had given her sophisticated understanding of image management and lifestyle presentation that required systematic control of every element that might affect their social standing and professional reputation throughout Austin's competitive wealth management and high society communities. The social circle that Michael and Rachel had cultivated included other wealth management professionals, high net worth clients, Austin business leaders, Texas political figure, and international investment authorities who expected sophisticated lifestyle presentation and family management that demonstrated the kind of success and stability that distinguished premium financial advisors from those struggling with personal or professional complications. The dinner parties that they hosted regularly attracted potential clients, professional networking contacts, social connections, and business opportunities that could generate millions in additional managed assets and substantial increases in Michael's annual income and performance bonuses. My son's $340,000 annual income and his wife Rachel's comfortable lifestyle as a former marketing executive who had quit her job to manage their social activities and luxury home were entirely dependent on the federal banking systems and regulatory compliance that I had been designing and maintaining throughout the financial services industry. The regulatory clean record that made their wealth management firm attractive to high net worth clients, the federal approval status that allowed them to manage millions in client assets, and the compliance standing that protected them from federal investigation, all existed because of the kind of banking oversight expertise and federal coordination that required exactly the authority I had been maintaining since before Michael graduated from college. But what made the timing of my family's systematic elderly dismissal particularly unfortunate was that my transition from Federal Reserve Bank employee to independent consultant had actually increased my authority and access to banking compliance systems throughout the southwestern United States. The consultation contracts that I had negotiated included continued access to all regulatory systems that I had managed during my career, emergency response authority for compliance failures and security incidents, and strategic planning responsibilities for next-generation banking oversight that would determine how financial institutions were regulated and monitored for the next 20 years. The October 14th dinner party where I would be banished to the spare closet represented the culmination of months of systematic elderly dismissal that had begun when Rachel convinced Michael to relocate me from my comfortable assisted living facility to their spare closet as a temporary arrangement that would save money while providing them with live-in elderly care assistance that wouldn't interfere with their luxury lifestyle and professional networking activities. The sequence of events that led to my relocation began in April 2024 when my husband of 47 years, James Harrison, passed away from complications related to his long battle with cancer. James had been a respected federal judge for the Western District of Texas, and his death had left me not only emotionally devastated, but also facing the reality that my comfortable assisted living arrangements were no longer financially sustainable on my federal retirement pension alone. Despite the substantial consultation income that I continued earning through the Harrison Institute and my federal banking expertise, Michael had initially responded to my situation with apparent concern and family loyalty, offering to help me navigate the financial complications and housing transitions that followed James's death. What I didn't understand at the time was that Rachel had already begun developing a strategic plan for managing their elderly care obligations that would minimize cost, reduce inconvenience, and eliminate any potential impact on their luxury lifestyle and professional advancement opportunities throughout Austin's competitive wealth management and high society communities. The assisted living facility where I had been living, Heritage Springs Senior Community, cost $800 per month and provided comfortable independent living with optional care services, social activities, and the kind of dignity and respect that I had expected to maintain throughout my retirement years. The facility included beautiful grounds, elegant dining facility, comprehensive medical support, intellectual stimulation through lectures and cultural events, and a community of educated, accomplished residents who shared similar backgrounds and interests in federal service, professional achievement, and traditional family value. Rachel had strategically positioned my relocation as both financial prudence and family generosity, convincing Michael that housing his elderly mother would demonstrate traditional family values, while providing her with better care than expensive assisted living facility. What she didn't mention was her systematic plan to minimize my presence in their home and eliminate any evidence of elderly relatives during their professional entertaining and wealth management client presentations that required sophisticated image management and lifestyle coordination. The spare closet where I had been living for 6 months measured 8 feet by 5 feet and contained a narrow twin bed, a small dresser, and barely enough space for my minimal belongings. The lack of windows, poor ventilation, and constant darkness created living conditions that would have violated assisted living facility standards, but Rachel had convinced Michael that I preferred private spaces and didn't need luxury accommodations that would be wasted on someone my age and would interfere with their home's aesthetic presentation and social functionality. The systematic degradation of my living situation had been gradual and strategic, beginning with Rachel's suggestion that I would be more comfortable in the smaller space that provided privacy and quiet, away from their busy household activities and professional entertaining requirements. Over the following months, she had systematically reduced my access to common areas, eliminated my involvement in meal planning and preparation, established strict protocols about when I could emerge from the closet and participate in household activity, and created scheduling systems that prevented my presence during any social or professional activities that might affect their image management and business development. The meals that I received consisted primarily of simple sandwiches, canned soup, and basic foods that Rachel could prepare quickly without interfering with her own cooking and meal planning for Michael and their social activity. The isolation and poor nutrition were affecting my health and energy levels, but Rachel had convinced Michael that elderly relatives required minimal nutrition and social interaction, and that my complaints about living conditions reflected typical elderly dissatisfaction, rather than legitimate concerns about dignity and basic care standards that distinguished respectful family relationships from systematic elderly exploitation. As I prepared for another night in the cramped spare closet, while listening to the sounds of their successful dinner party and discussions about upcoming client acquisition strategy, I realized that my family had made the most catastrophic miscalculation of their lives about the relationship between family respect and federal banking authority, between traditional values and modern financial regulation, and between the elderly mother they had relegated to storage space and federal banking expert, whose regulatory authority could either continue supporting their comfortable wealth management business or make their professional licenses disappear from every system that determined contemporary financial institution approval and federal regulatory compliance. Family didn't understand was that their systematic approach to elderly accommodation, and their assumption that I would gratefully accept any housing arrangement, regardless of dignity or comfort, had created comprehensive documentation of their character priorities and family values that would determine their access to continued regulatory protection and federal banking oversight support. The strategic planning that they had invested in minimizing my presence and maximizing their lifestyle convenience had generated detailed evidence of their elderly treatment and family loyalty, would justify implementing consequences that affected every aspect of their wealth management business and federal regulatory standing. The confident satisfaction that Rachel displayed about successfully managing their elderly care obligations while maintaining their luxury lifestyle reflects her assumption that federal banking protection and regulatory approval were automatic benefits that continued regardless of how elderly relatives were treated during professional advancement and social networking activities. The systematic dismissal that she had implemented through months of strategic planning would become the documented foundation for terminating the federal banking advantages and regulatory protection that had been supporting their wealth management business, throughout their comfortable assumption that family loyalty was optional when it conflicted with professional image management and social advancement requirements. As the dinner party continued in the main house, and I reflected on the months of systematic degradation that had brought me to this point, I understood that the time had come to demonstrate the true cost of treating elderly relatives like disposable conveniences, and the real meaning of federal banking authority when family respect and traditional values were abandoned in favor of luxury lifestyle maintenance and professional image management that prioritized appearance over character and convenience over loyalty. The evening that would change everything started when I made what seemed like a simple request to Rachel around 3:30 p.m. on October 1st, as she was preparing for their luxury dinner party that would host 12 of Austin's most affluent investors and potential clients for Pinnacle Financial Advisors. What I didn't expect was that this routine family interaction would become the public humiliation that would reveal the true extent of my daughter-in-law's systematic elderly dismissal strategy and my son's complete willingness to prioritize professional image management over basic family respect and human dignity. "Rachel," I said gently as she arranged imported flowers in their $3,200 crystal vase from Baccarat, "I was hoping I could spend the evening in the living room reading while you have your dinner party. I promise I'll be quiet and won't interfere with your entertaining." The request seemed reasonable to me after 6 months of living in her spare closet. I simply wanted to sit in a comfortable chair with proper lighting and perhaps enjoy the sounds of civilized conversation that reminded me of the intellectual stimulation and social engagement that I had lost when they relocated me from Heritage Springs Senior Community. Rachel's response revealed the calculated nature of her elderly management strategy and her systematic approach to eliminating any evidence of family members who didn't contribute to their carefully curated lifestyle presentation. "Eleanor, that's absolutely not possible tonight," she announced with the kind of professional efficiency that she had perfected during her marketing career and applied to managing what she considered family complications. "We're hosting very important clients who represent millions in potential managed assets, and Michael's career advancement depends on maintaining a specific image and lifestyle presentation that demonstrates our success and sophistication." The conversation that followed would expose systematic planning that Rachel had invested in elderly exclusion and the professional consultation that had convinced her that family members needed to either contribute to their luxury positioning or be eliminated from their social and business activity. Tonight's dinner party includes the Richardsons, who are considering transferring $12 million in assets to Pinnacle Financial, Rachel explained while reviewing her meticulously planned seating arrangements and menu coordination. "We also have the Mitchells, who inherited $18 million and need wealth management guidance, and the Kowalskis, who sold their technology company for $45 million and are evaluating investment advisors throughout Austin." The financial stakes that Rachel described revealed the systematic pressure that she and Michael faced to maintain perfect image management and lifestyle presentation that attracted high net worth clients and distinguished premium wealth management services from those struggling to build trust and credibility with millionaire investors. The combined potential assets that would be discussed during their dinner party exceeded, representing fees and commissions that could generate hundreds of thousands in additional annual income for Michael's wealth management practice and substantially increase their luxury lifestyle and professional advancement opportunity. But what made Rachel's elderly exclusion strategy particularly calculated was her detailed explanation of the image management requirements that she believed were necessary for successful wealth management marketing and client acquisition activity. "Eleanor, you have to understand that wealth management is about trust and credibility," she continued while adjusting place settings and reviewing her evening timeline. "Our clients need to see that we've achieved the kind of personal success and family sophistication that demonstrates our ability to manage their financial security and investment strategies." The systematic nature of Rachel's approach to elderly management became apparent as she explained the professional consultation that had guided their family relationship decisions and the strategic planning that had convinced them to prioritize business development over traditional family values and generational respect. "We've been working with Morrison Strategy Consulting, a firm that specializes in wealth management, marketing, and client acquisition for high net worth advisory services," Rachel announced with obvious satisfaction about their professional approach to image optimization and lifestyle presentation. Morrison Strategy Consulting, I would later discover, was an Austin-based firm that charged wealth management professionals $8,700 per month for comprehensive brand development and client acquisition strategies that included family relationship management. lifestyle optimization, and image coordination that helped financial advisors attract millionaire clients and maintain the kind of sophisticated presentation that distinguished premium advisory services from basic financial planning and investment management that served middle-class families and modest investors. Harrison Mitchell, the senior consultant who was directing Rachel and Michael's image development strategy, had built his reputation by helping Austin financial professionals create marketable personas that appealed to high net worth demographics and generated substantial increases in managed assets and advisory fees. His approach to wealth management marketing specifically emphasized life's authenticity and family presentation that demonstrated multi-generational success and sophisticated financial management that distinguished his clients from advisors who couldn't demonstrate personal wealth accumulation and family financial security. Mitchell has been very clear that successful wealth management marketing requires consistent messaging about personal achievement and family success. Rachel explained while reviewing the consultation materials and strategic planning documents that had guided their elderly management decisions. Having family members who represent different economic backgrounds or lifestyle approaches creates confusion that can affect client trust and reduce our ability to attract high net worth investors who expect their financial advisors to have achieved personal wealth and family financial security. The brand development strategy that Dr. Mitchell had recommended included specific protocols for managing family presentation during client entertainment and social networking activities that could affect their professional reputation and business development opportunities. The system approach that they had developed for family relationship management treated elderly relatives like potential marketing complications, requiring strategic exclusion and image optimization rather than family members deserving respect and inclusion regardless of their economic status or lifestyle. Compatibility with wealth management, business requirements. But perhaps the most revealing aspect of their professional consultation was Dr. Mitchell's emphasis on generational wealth demonstration and family financial legacy presentation that required eliminating any evidence of family members who hadn't achieved comparable financial success or whose presence might suggest that their wealth management expertise was recently acquired rather than reflecting multi-generational financial sophistication and family investment knowledge that distinguished premium advisory services newly successful financial professionals. The business calculations that drove Rachel's systematic elderly exclusion included detailed financial analysis of client acquisition opportunities and revenue potential that required maintaining strict image consistency and lifestyle authentication throughout their social and professional activity. The wealth management industry in Austin was intensely competitive, with over 340 financial advisory firms competing for high net worth clients, whose investment decisions could determine whether advisory practices thrived or struggled to maintain basic profitability and business sustainability. Michael's position at Pinnacle Financial Advisors required not just technical expertise in investment management and financial planning, but sophisticated personal branding and lifestyle presentation that convinced millionaire clients that he possessed the wisdom and personal financial success that qualified him to manage their wealth and protect their investment portfolios. The competition for high net worth clients included advisors who had inherited multi-generational wealth, graduated from Ivy League business school, and maintained family connections to old money families and established financial institutions that provided credibility and trust that newer wealth management professionals struggled to achieve. The specific client acquisition targets that Michael and Rachel had identified for their October dinner party represented months of strategic networking and relationship development that required maintaining consistent lifestyle presentation and family image management that demonstrated their qualification to serve families whose net worth exceeded most people's lifetime earnings. The Richardson family, who were considering transferring $12 million in assets to Pinnacle Financial, had been evaluating wealth management options for 8 months and had eliminated several advisory firms whose family presentation or lifestyle positioning didn't meet their expectations for sophisticated financial professionals. The Mitchell family, who had inherited $18 million and needed comprehensive estate planning and investment management, represented the kind of generational wealth transfer that required advisors who understood family financial dynamics and multi-generational investment strategies that preserved wealth across decades and family transitions. Their decision-making process included evaluating not just technical expertise, but family values and personal character that determined whether financial advisors could be trusted with family legacy planning and generational wealth preservation that required both professional competence and personal integrity. The Kowalski family, who had sold their technology company for $45 million and were seeking investment management and tax optimization strategies, represented newly acquired wealth that required advisors who understood both sophisticated investment opportunities and the psychological challenges of managing sudden wealth acquisition and lifestyle transitions that distinguished successful wealth preservation from families who squandered their financial opportunities through poor planning and inadequate professional guidance. The conversation that would trigger everything occurred when I attempted to explain my request and express my feelings about the isolation and exclusion that had characterized my living situation for the previous 6 months. Rachel, I understand that you have important business activities tonight, but I've been living in that closet for months without any social interaction or family engagement, I said with the kind of measured dignity that reflected my professional background and federal service experience. I'm not asking to participate in your dinner party or interfere with your business development. I simply want to sit in the living room and read while maintaining respectful distance from your activity. Rachel's response revealed the systematic nature of her elderly dismissal strategy and her complete commitment to eliminating any family presence that might compromise their carefully curated lifestyle presentation and business development activity. Eleanor, I think you're misunderstanding the situation, she announced with the kind of diplomatic cruelty that successful marketing professionals use when delivering unwelcome news to clients or colleagues. Tonight isn't just a family dinner party, it's a critical business development opportunity that could determine Michael's career advancement and our financial security for years to come. The explanation that followed revealed Rachel's detailed planning for elderly management and her systematic approach to family relationship control that prioritized business objectives over traditional family values and generational respect. We've invested months of strategic planning and thousands of dollars in professional consultation to create tonight's presentation, Rachel continued while reviewing her checklist and timeline for the evening's activity. The image management and lifestyle coordination that we've developed requires careful control of every element that might affect our clients' perception of our success and sophistication. But what made Rachel's response particularly devastating was her systematic approach to explaining why my presence represented an unacceptable risk to their business development and professional advancement opportunity. The clients we're hosting tonight have specific expectations about wealth management professionals and the kind of family success that demonstrates qualification to manage their investment portfolio. She explained with obvious satisfaction about her strategic thinking and professional consultation. Having family members who represent different economic backgrounds or lifestyle approaches creates questions about our personal financial management and family success that could affect their trust and willingness to transfer assets to Pinnacle Financial. The cold calculation behind Rachel's family relationship management revealed how completely she had embraced the kind of business thinking that prioritized image curation over authentic relationships and financial opportunity over traditional family loyalty and generational respect. We've worked too hard building our reputation and client base to risk having family complications affect our business development, she continued with growing confidence about her systematic approach to elderly exclusion and professional advancement prioritization. The moment that would change everything came when Michael entered the kitchen and Rachel briefed him on our conversation and my request to remain in the living room during their dinner party. What I witnessed next was my son's complete transformation from family member to business partner. As he evaluated my request through the lens of professional advancement and client acquisition rather than basic family respect and elderly care obligations that distinguished responsible family relationships from systematic exploitation and dignity violation. Mom, I think Rachel's right about tonight, Michael announced with obvious discomfort but clear determination to support his wife's business development strategy over family relationships and elderly accommodation. We've got potential clients coming who represent the biggest opportunity of my career, and we need to maintain absolute professionalism and image consistency that demonstrates our success and qualifications to manage their wealth. The conversation that followed revealed Michael's complete adoption of Rachel's elderly management strategy and his systematic approach to family relationship prioritization that placed business advancement above traditional family values and generational respect. The thing is, Michael continued with the kind of diplomatic language that wealth management professionals use when delivering unwelcome news to clients. These clients are evaluating everything about our personal success and family management as indicators of our professional qualifications and trustworthiness. But what made Michael's response particularly devastating was his detailed explanation of the business stakes and professional requirements that he believed justifies systematic elderly exclusion and family relationship subordination to business development objectives. The Richardsons alone represent $12 million in potential managed assets, he explained while reviewing the client profiles and business development materials that Rachel had prepared. That's annual fees exceeding $120,000 and the kind of account that could establish my reputation throughout Austin's wealth management community. The systematic nature of Michael's business calculations revealed how completely he had embraced the professional consultation and strategic plan that treated family relationships like marketing assets, requiring optimization and management, rather than authentic connections, deserving respect and loyalty regardless of business implications or professional advancement opportunity. We've invested too much time and money in building tonight's presentation to risk having any complications affect our client acquisition and business development, he continued with growing confidence about his systematic approach to family management and professional prioritization. The final insult came when Rachel delivered the statement that would trigger the most comprehensive demonstration of federal banking authority that the wealth management industry had ever witnessed. "Eleanor, I think it would be best if you just stayed in the spare closet tonight and kept out of sight," she announced with the kind of casual cruelty that revealed her complete dismissal of elderly dignity and family respect. "Our clients don't need to know about family complications or housing arrangements that might create questions about our personal success and lifestyle management." The phrase "kept out of sight" revealed the systematic nature of Rachel's elderly management strategy and her complete commitment, treating family members like disposable inconveniences rather than human beings deserving basic respect and dignity regardless of their economic status or contribution to business development activities. The casual confidence with which she delivered this statement reflected months of strategic planning and professional consultation that had convinced her that elderly relatives were obstacles to overcome rather than family members deserving care and inclusion in family activities and social interaction. Michael's immediate agreement with Rachel's directive revealed his complete transformation from son to business partner as he prioritized professional advancement over family loyalty and elderly care obligations that distinguished responsible family relationships from systematic exploitation and dignity violation. "That's probably the best approach, Mom," he announced with obvious relief about their systematic solution to family complications and business development requirements. "We need tonight to go perfectly, and having any distractions or complications could affect our client presentations and business opportunities." The systematic coordination between Rachel and Michael revealed months of strategic planning and professional consultation that had convinced the elderly family members needed to either contribute to their business development or be eliminated from their lifestyle presentation and social activity. The casual efficiency with which they dismissed my request and dignity reflected their complete adoption of business thinking that treated family relationships like marketing challenges, requiring strategic management and optimization rather than authentic connections, deserving respect and loyalty. But what my son and daughter-in-law didn't understand was that their systematic approach to elderly dismissal and their professional consultation about family relationship management had created comprehensive documentation of their character priorities and business values that would determine their access to continued regulatory protection and federal banking oversight support. The strategic planning that they had celebrated as evidence of sophisticated business development, would become the documented foundation for consequences that would affect every aspect of their wealth management practice and professional advancement opportunity. The conversation that sealed their fate occurred in front of Maria Santos, their housekeeper, who had been working in the adjacent dining room, and witnessed the entire exchange between Rachel, Michael, and myself regarding the evening's family arrangements and elderly management protocols. Maria had been employed by the Harrison family for 3 years, and had observed the systematic degradation of my living situation and the progressive elimination of my access to common areas and family activities that distinguished respectable elderly care from systematic exploitation and dignity violations. The presence of a witness to their systematic elderly dismissal would become critical documentation of their character priorities and family values, and Maria's observations included detailed knowledge of my living condition, the progression of restrictions and exclusions that Rachel had implemented, and the systematic nature of their approach to elderly management that prioritized luxury lifestyle maintenance over basic human dignity and family respect. Maria's understanding of my professional background, which she had learned through conversations during my initial weeks in their home, included awareness that I was a retired federal banking official rather than a financially dependent elderly relative, requiring charity and accommodation. Her knowledge of the professional consultation that Michael and Rachel had received regarding family image management provided additional documentation of the systematic planning and calculated cruelty that had led to their elderly exclusions, strategy and business development priority. The systematic documentation that Maria had observed included Rachel's detailed protocols for managing my access to common areas, the scheduling restrictions that prevented my presence during social activities, the meal planning that provided minimal nutrition and social interaction, and the progressive elimination of my involvement in family decisions and household activities that reflected systematic elderly marginalization rather than reasonable accommodation and care coordination. What Rachel and Michael didn't know was that their systematic elderly dismissal and October 14th conversation had been comprehensively documented through the home security system that Michael had installed to protect their luxury furnishings and monitor their property during social activities and business entertaining. The security cameras and audio recording capabilities that had implemented for property protection had captured every detail of their family relationship management and elderly treatment that would become evidence of character priorities and business values that justified federal regulatory action and compliance investigation. The recorded documentation included not just the October 14th conversation, but months of systematic elderly exclusion, strategic planning sessions with Rachel about family image management, discussions of professional consultation regarding business development and lifestyle presentation, and detailed evidence of the progressive degradation of my living conditions and elimination of access to basic dignity and family respect that distinguished their treatment from reasonable elderly care and accommodation. The comprehensive nature of the recorded evidence included Rachel's detailed explanations of her elderly management strategy, Michael's adoption of business prioritization over family loyalty, their coordination regarding client acquisition and wealth management, and their systematic approach to eliminating family complications that might affect their professional advancement and business development opportunities throughout Austin's competitive wealth management industry. But perhaps the most damaging aspect of the recorded evidence was their casual confidence and systematic coordination regarding elderly dismissal, which demonstrated that their treatment of family members reflected calculated business decisions rather than emotional responses or temporary stress about professional requirement. The documentary evidence revealed character priorities and business values that would justify federal regulatory investigation and compliance action that could affect their access to banking systems and financial industry participation. As I returned to the spare closet that evening and listened to the sounds of their successful dinner party, including conversations about multi-million-dollar asset transfers and wealth management opportunities, I realized that the systematic elderly dismissal that Rachel and Michael had implemented represented more than family relationship complications. It constituted evidence of character and business practices that violated federal banking compliance standards and professional conduct requirements that governed financial services industry participation and regulatory approval. The federal banking regulations that I had spent 4 decades developing and implementing included specific standards for professional conduct and character evaluation that determined whether financial professionals maintained access to banking systems and regulatory approval for wealth management activities. The systematic elderly treatment and family relationship management that Rachel and Michael had documented through their own security systems provided evidence of character priorities that violated federal standards and justified regulatory investigation and compliance action. The Harrison Institute for Federal Banking Compliance had established protocols for evaluating professional conduct and character standards that included family relationship management, elderly treatment, and dignity respect as indicators of trustworthiness and integrity that determined whether financial professionals deserved continued access to banking systems and regulatory protection. The systematic elderly dismissal that my family had implemented violated multiple character standards and professional conduct requirements that governed federal banking industry participation. But perhaps the most significant aspect of their character violation is the systematic nature of their elderly dismissal and the professional consultation that had guided their family relationship management, which demonstrated calculated cruelty rather than temporary stress or emotional decision-making that might be addressed through counseling and behavior modification. The documentary evidence revealed character priorities that justified permanent regulatory action and compliance investigation that could affect their professional licenses and access to federal banking systems. The evening of October, as I prepared for another night in the cramped spare closet while listening to Michael and Rachel celebrate their successful client acquisition and business development achievements, I understood that the time had come to demonstrate the true cost of systematic elderly dismissal and the meaning of federal banking authority when family respect and traditional values were abandoned in favor of business advancement and professional image management that prioritized financial opportunity over character integrity and human dignity. The federal banking systems that had been supporting their wealth management practice and enabling their luxury lifestyle would soon become the instruments of consequences that reflected the true relationship between character standards and regulatory protection, between family loyalty and professional integrity, and between the elderly mother they had relegated to storage space and the federal banking authority, whose compliance standards would determine whether their comfortable assumptions about business success and professional advancement could survive. Contact with regulatory and character evaluation at distinguished legitimate financial professionals from those whose conduct violated federal standards and community trust requirements. The full scope of my federal banking authority encompassed responsibilities and capabilities that extended far beyond what most people could comprehend about modern financial oversight and regulatory coordination. As Chief Compliance Auditor for Regional Banking Oversight at the Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas, I had possessed what was essentially master-level access to the most powerful financial monitoring and enforcement systems in existence, with the ability to affect banking operations, institutional licenses, and financial access for millions of account holders and thousands of financial institutions throughout the southwestern United States and internationally. My federal authority included the power to initiate regulatory investigations that could result in institutional shutdowns, implement compliance holds that prevented financial institutions from conducting business, coordinate with federal law enforcement agencies for criminal prosecution, execute account freezes that affected individual and corporate banking access, and implement emergency protocols that protected banking system stability during financial crises and security threats. The breadth of my regulatory reach meant that I could affect everything from individual checking accounts to multi-billion-dollar institutional investment portfolios, with a few keystrokes and proper authorization protocols. The regulatory systems under my control processed over $47 billion in daily financial transactions throughout the southwestern region, monitored compliance activities for over 4,200 financial institutions, coordinated oversight with 23 different federal agencies, and maintained direct communication links with international banking authorities throughout North America, Europe, and Asia. The responsibility that I carried for protecting financial system integrity and consumer security meant that my decisions could affect regional economic stability, international banking relationships, and federal monetary policy that influenced global financial markets and economic development. The security clearance that enabled my access to these systems, designated as top secret sensitive compartmented information with special access programs, TSSCISA, represented the highest level of federal authorization available to banking oversight officials. The clearance required extensive background investigations that included financial audits, psychological evaluations, polygraph examinations, and continuous monitoring that verified my reliability, integrity, and commitment to protecting national economic security and international financial stability through responsible regulatory oversight and professional conduct. But perhaps the most significant aspect of my federal authority was the discretionary power that I possessed to evaluate CARE standards and professional conduct that determined whether financial institutions and individual banking professionals maintained access to federal banking systems and regulatory protection. The character assessment protocols that I had developed included systematic evaluation of personal integrity, family relationship management, elderly treatment, and dignity respect, and professional conduct that demonstrated the trustworthiness required for participation in federal banking activities and consumer protection responsibility. The professional relationships that I had developed throughout my 4 decades of federal banking service included direct connections with senior officials at every major regulatory agency, federal law enforcement organization, and international banking authority throughout the Western Hemisphere. These relationships represented decades of professional collaboration, mutual respect, and shared commitment to protecting financial system integrity and consumer security through effective regulatory oversight and international cooperation that maintained banking stability while enabling economic growth and financial innovation. My direct contacts included the chairman and vice chairman of the Federal Reserve Board of Governors, the Secretary and Deputy Secretary of the Treasury, the Director and Associate Directors of the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, the Comptroller and Deputy Comptrollers of the Currency, the Chairman and Commissioners of the Securities and Exchange Commission, and the Director and Assistant Directors of the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network. These relationships enabled immediate coordination during financial emergencies, efficient resolution of regulatory disputes, and strategic planning for banking oversight policies that affected national economic security and international financial cooperation. The international banking relationships that I had cultivated included central banking officials throughout North America, Europe, and Asia, who relied on my expertise for regulatory coordination, crisis response planning, and strategic guidance for banking oversight, modernization, and international cooperation. My consultation work had included policy development for the Bank of Canada, European Central Bank, Bank of England, Bank of Japan, Swiss National Bank, and central banking authorities throughout South America and Asia, who sought to implement advanced regulatory technologies and coordination protocol. The private sector relationships that I had developed included senior executives at major financial institutions, who consulted my expertise for regulatory compliance guidance, crisis response coordination, strategic planning for navigating complex federal oversight requirements, and international banking regulation. My consultation clients had included JP Morgan Chase, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, Citigroup, Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, and international banking organizations throughout Europe and Asia, who required specialized expertise in federal banking coordination and regulatory compliance management. But perhaps the most important aspect of my professional network was the informal coordination system that had developed among federal banking officials who shared information, coordinated responses to regulatory challenge, and maintained the personal relationships that enabled effective federal oversight and crisis response during financial emergencies. This network operated through secure communication channels, regular coordination meetings, and strategic planning sessions that ensured consistent regulatory enforcement and professional cooperation that protected banking system integrity and consumer security. The influence that I had exercised on federal banking policy development encompassed fundamental changes to regulatory oversight, compliance monitoring, and international coordination that had shaped modern banking regulation and financial system protection throughout North America and international. My policy recommendations had been implemented by federal banking agencies, adopted by international regulatory authorities, and incorporated into banking oversight protocols that protected millions of consumers and maintained financial system stability during economic challenges and technological changes. The Dodd-Frank Wall Street Reform and Consumer Protection Act had incorporated regulatory protocols that I had developed for banking oversight coordination, crisis response management, and consumer protection that distinguished legitimate banking activities from predatory practices and financial crimes. My policy contributions included provisions for automated compliance monitoring, international coordination requirements, and character assessment standards that ensured banking professionals maintained the integrity and trustworthiness required for consumer protection responsibilities and financial system stability. The Basel III International Banking Regulations had adopted Harrison Institute protocols for capital adequacy assessment, risk management evaluation, and international coordination that improved banking system stability while maintaining efficient financial services for businesses and consumers. My consultation work with international banking authorities had included policy development for global banking oversight, crisis response coordination, and strategic planning for next-generation regulatory technologies that would determine how banking was supervised worldwide. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau had implemented Harrison Institute recommendations for banking oversight coordination, consumer protection enforcement, and regulatory compliance monitoring that improved consumer financial security while reducing regulatory costs and administrative burdens for legitimate financial institutions. My policy contributions included automated compliance verification systems, character assessment protocols, and international coordination procedures that enhanced consumer protection effectively. The Federal Reserve Bank emergency response protocols had incorporated my crisis management recommendations for banking system protection, multi-agency coordination, and international cooperation during financial emergencies that threatened economic stability or consumer security. My policy development work had included procedures for automatic threat detection, immediate response coordination, and strategic communication that maintained public confidence while protecting banking system integrity during crisis situations. The technological innovations that I had developed and implemented throughout the federal banking oversight system represented revolutionary advances in financial regulation and compliance monitoring that had transformed how banking was supervised and protected throughout the United States and internationally. The technologies that I had pioneered included artificial intelligence applications for fraud detection, quantum computing systems for transaction analysis, blockchain protocols for compliance verification, and international coordination networks that enabled real-time oversight across multiple jurisdictions and regulatory frameworks. The Sentinel-7 artificial intelligence system that I had designed and continued to oversee represented the most advanced financial crime detection and compliance monitoring technology in existence. The system used machine learning algorithms to analyze banking patterns, natural language processing to evaluate communications for evidence of violations, predictive analytics to forecast potential problems, and automated response protocols that prevented financial crimes while maintaining efficient banking services for legitimate business and consumer activity. The quantum computing applications that I had developed enabled banking analysis at previously impossible speeds and complexity levels, allowing detection of financial crimes and regulatory violations that traditional systems couldn't identify. The quantum algorithms processed millions of transactions simultaneously, identified patterns suggesting illegal activity, generated comprehensive analysis reports, and coordinated automatic responses that protected consumers and banking system integrity while maintaining privacy protection and constitutional rights. The blockchain regulatory compliance systems that I had created enabled financial institutions to verify their compliance with federal regulations automatically, reducing regulatory costs while improving oversight effectiveness and consumer protection. The blockchain systems created permanent compliance records, enabled real-time verification of regulatory status, provided federal regulators with immediate access to institutional compliance data, and facilitated international coordination for global banking oversight and consumer protection. The international coordination networks that I had established enabled real-time communication and coordination with banking authorities throughout North America, Europe, and Asia for managing global financial challenges that required multi-jurisdictional cooperation and regulatory coordination. The networks had proven effective during international banking crises, facilitated efficient investigation of international financial crimes, and enabled coordinated protection of global banking system stability and consumer financial security. The crisis response capabilities that I had developed and continued to coordinate represented the most comprehensive financial emergency management system ever created, with the ability to detect threats to banking system stability, coordinate an immediate multi-agency response, implement emergency protection protocols, and maintain financial system integrity during national security threats, natural disasters, and international financial emergencies that could affect millions of consumers and thousands of financial institutions. The automated threat detection systems that operated under my oversight monitored banking activity continuously for signs of systemic risk, organized financial crime, terrorist financial networks, foreign economic espionage, and cybersecurity threats that could affect banking system stability or consumer financial security. The systems analyzed banking data in real time, identified emerging threats as they developed, and initiated response protocols that prevented financial emergencies while maintaining efficient banking services and consumer privacy protection. The multi-agency coordination protocols that I had established enabled immediate communication and response coordination with the Treasury Department, Federal Bureau of Investigation, Department of Homeland Security, National Security Agency, Central Intelligence Agency, and international law enforcement agencies for managing financial threats that required federal law enforcement response and international cooperation. The coordination systems had been tested during several national security emergencies and had proven effective for protecting banking system integrity while maintaining constitutional protections and international cooperation. The emergency response protocols that I had developed included automatic implementation of protective measures that safeguarded banking system stability during crisis situations, coordination of federal agency responses that protected consumer financial security, and strategic communication procedures that maintained public confidence while enabling effective crisis management and threat response. The protocols had been used during natural disasters, cybersecurity attacks, and international financial emergencies, with proven effectiveness for protecting banking system integrity and consumer financial security. The international crisis coordination capabilities that I maintained included direct communication with central banking authorities throughout North America, Europe, and Asia for managing global financial emergencies that required international cooperation and coordinated regulatory responses. The coordination systems enabled real-time information sharing, coordinated policy responses, and strategic planning for protecting global banking system stability while maintaining national sovereignty and regulatory effectiveness. The Harrison Institute for Federal Banking Compliance had grown far beyond a simple training organization to become the most influential federal banking education and policy development institution in North America. With graduates occupying senior positions at regulatory agencies throughout the United States, Canada, Mexico, and international, the Institute's influence extended to policy development consultation, regulatory framework design, crisis response coordination, and strategic planning for next-generation banking oversight that would determine how financial institutions were regulated for the next generation. The Institute's curriculum included advanced training in federal banking oversight protocols, international regulatory coordination, crisis response management, artificial intelligence applications for banking oversight, quantum computing systems for financial analysis, blockchain technologies for compliance verification, and strategic planning for banking system modernization that balanced consumer protection with economic efficiency and technological innovation. The training provided graduates with expertise that was unavailable through traditional educational institutions and professional development programs. The consultation services that the Institute provided included comprehensive regulatory framework development for federal banking agency policy analysis for congressional banking committees, crisis response planning for state banking authorities, and strategic guidance for international banking organizations seeking to modernize their oversight capabilities and regulatory effectiveness. The consultation contracts ranged from basic compliance training to comprehensive regulatory system design that could affect banking oversight for entire regions or countries. The Research and Development Division of the Institute had developed the next generation of banking oversight technologies that would be implemented throughout the U.S. banking system and internationally over the following decades. The innovations included quantum encrypted banking analysis system, artificial intelligence fraud detection protocols, blockchain compliance verification technologies, and international coordination networks that would revolutionize how banking was supervised and protected while maintaining consumer privacy and economic efficiency. The international partnerships that the Institute had established included formal cooperation agreements with central banking authorities throughout Europe, Asia, and South America for developing global banking oversight standards, coordinating international regulatory response, and implementing advanced banking oversight technologies that protected global financial system stability while enabling international commerce and economic development. What made my authority particularly relevant to Michael and Rachel's situation was the specialized oversight system that I developed for wealth management firms and investment advisors who served high net worth clients and managed substantial assets that required enhanced regulatory monitoring and character assessment. The wealth management oversight protocols included systematic evaluation of professional conduct, family relationship management, elderly treatment standards, and personal integrity that determined whether financial professionals qualified for federal banking privileges and consumer protection responsibility. As a federally registered investment advisor managing over $2.4 billion, was subject to the enhanced oversight protocols that I had established for wealth management firms, serving affluent clients whose investment portfolios required specialized protection and regulatory monitoring. The oversight included continuous monitoring of business practices, systematic assessment of professional conduct and character standards, and detailed evaluation of personal behavior that could affect client trust and regulatory qualification for federal banking industry participation. The character assessment protocols that I had developed specifically for wealth management professionals included evaluation of family relationship management, elderly treatment and dignity respect, personal conduct that demonstrated integrity and trustworthiness, and professional behavior that met the highest standards required for managing substantial client assets and maintaining consumer confidence in financial advisory services. The protocols recognized that wealth management required exceptional character standards because of the trust and responsibility involved in managing client financial security and investment portfolio. The monitoring systems that tracked wealth management firm activities included automated analysis of business practices and professional conduct, systematic documentation of character-related behavior and family relationship management, continuous assessment of compliance with enhanced standards required for high-net-worth client service, and detailed recording of any conduct that might suggest violations of professional standards or character requirements that governed federal banking industry participation and consumer protection responsibility. The enforcement capabilities that I possessed for wealth management oversight included the authority to implement enhanced scrutiny and compliance monitoring, initiate character assessment investigations that could affect professional license, coordinate with state securities regulators for comprehensive regulatory review, and implement account monitoring or freezing that could affect firm operations and client services until character and compliance issues were resolved through proper regulatory channels and verification process. The comprehensive documentation system that I had established for federal banking oversight included automated recording of all activities, communications, and decisions that affected financial institutions and banking professionals throughout the southwestern region. The documentation protocols ensured accountability, provided evidence for regulatory enforcement actions, maintained historical records for policy development, and created comprehensive databases that supported research and analysis for improving banking oversight effectiveness and consumer protection. The automated monitoring systems that operated under my oversight included continuous recording of banking industry activity, systematic documentation of professional conduct and character-related behavior, detailed logging of regulatory compliance and violation patterns, and comprehensive analysis of trends and patterns that informed policy development and enforcement priority. The systems created permanent records that could be accessed for regulatory investigations, enforcement actions, and policy research that improved banking oversight effectiveness. The character assessment documentation included systematic recording of family relationship management, elderly treatment and dignity respect, personal conduct that demonstrated professional integrity, and behavior patterns that indicated qualification for federal banking industry participation and consumer protection responsibility. The documentation protocols recognized that character assessment required comprehensive evidence collection and analysis that supported fair and accurate evaluation of professional qualifications and trustworthiness. The evidence collection systems that I had implemented included automated analysis of publicly available information, systematic monitoring of professional conduct and business practices, detailed documentation of character-related behavior and family relationship management, comprehensive recording of any conduct that might affect regulatory qualification or consumer protection responsibilities. The systems ensured that character assessment was based on objective evidence and systematic analysis, rather than subjective judgment or incomplete information. Perhaps the most significant aspect of the documentation system was its integration with enforcement capabilities that enabled immediate implementation of regulatory consequences when character violations or professional misconduct were identified through systematic monitoring and evidence collection. The documentation provided the evidentiary foundation for regulatory actions that protected consumer interests and maintained banking system integrity through effective enforcement of character standards and professional conduct requirements. As I reflected on the systematic elderly dismissal that Michael and Rachel had implemented and celebrated as successful business strategy, I realized that their conduct had been comprehensively documented through the same federal banking oversight systems that they depended on for their professional success and business operation. The character violations that they had systematically implemented would become the evidentiary foundation for regulatory consequences that would demonstrate the true relationship between family loyalty and professional integrity, between elderly respect and character qualification, and between the systematic cruelty they had disguised as business necessity and the Federal Banking Authority, whose oversight systems had been documenting their violations and preparing comprehensive consequences that would transform their understanding of power, accountability, and the true cost of treating family members like disposable business complications. The morning of November 1st, 2024, exactly 18 days after Rachel told me to stay in the spare closet and keep out of sight during their luxury dinner party, I walked into my home office at 4:33 a.m. and implemented the most comprehensive demonstration of federal banking authority that the financial services industry had ever witnessed. The systematic consequences that I executed over the following 8 hours would transform Michael and Rachel's comfortable assumptions about family relationships, elderly respect, and professional security
into the most expensive education about character standards and regulatory accountability that any wealth management professionals had ever received. The documentation that I had been compiling since October 14th included comprehensive evidence of systematic elderly dismissal, calculated family relationship exploitation, professional conduct violation, and character standards failures that justified implementing the full range of regulatory consequences available through Federal Banking Oversight Authority. The character assessment protocols that I had developed specifically for wealth management professionals had identified Michael and Rachel's conduct as representing exactly the kind of integrity violations that disqualify financial professionals from federal banking industry participation and consumer protection responsibility. I initiated the first phase of regulatory action by implementing enhanced scrutiny protocol for Pinnacle Financial Advisors, which immediately triggered comprehensive compliance review, character assessment, investigation, and systematic evaluation of all business practices, client relation, and professional conduct that could affect their qualification for federal banking privileges and wealth management industry participation. The protocol required immediate notification to state securities regulators, federal banking oversight agencies, and client protection organizations that would coordinate investigation and enforcement activity. The enhanced scrutiny protocol that I activated included automatic suspension of new client account establishment, mandatory review of all existing client relationships, and investment advisory activity. Immediate implementation of compliance monitoring that tracked all financial transactions and business communication, and systematic evaluation of professional conduct and character standards that determined continued qualification for wealth management industry participation and federal banking system access. By 6:30 a.m., the automated notification systems had generated alerts to the Texas State Securities Board, Securities and Exchange Commission, Financial Industry Regulatory Authority, and Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation regarding potential character violations and professional conduct failures that
The client notifications that continued throughout the morning included letters to 8047 high net worth families whose combined assets exceeded $2.4 billion. Explanations of regulatory oversight and compliance investigation that could affect their wealth management services, and mandatory disclosure of character assessment protocols that evaluated professional qualification for consumer protection responsibilities. The notifications provided clients with information about alternative wealth management options and regulatory protection procedures that safeguarded their investment portfolios during compliance investigation and enforcement proceedings. But perhaps the most devastating immediate impact was the effect on new client acquisition and business development that had been the foundation of Michael's income growth and professional advancement opportunities. The enhanced scrutiny protocol included automatic suspension of new client account establishment, mandatory disclosure of regulatory investigation to prospective clients, and compliance monitoring that prevented normal marketing and business development activities that generated revenue and professional growth. The Richardson family, who had been considering transferring $12 million in assets to Pinnacle Financial following the October 14th dinner party, received notification of the regulatory investigation at 8:22 a.m. and immediately suspended their evaluation process pending resolution of character assessment and compliance review. The notification included detailed explanation of elderly treatment violations and family relationship exploitation that had triggered federal regulatory action and character disqualification investigation, who had been preparing to transfer $118 million in inherited assets to Pinnacle Financial for comprehensive estate planning and investment management, canceled their scheduled consultation appointment and began evaluating alternative wealth management options following receipt of regulatory disclosure notification. The character assessment investigation represented exactly the kind of professional conduct concern that wealthy families sought to avoid when selecting financial advisors for generational wealth management and family legacy planning. The Kowalski family, who had been negotiating wealth management services for their $45 million technology company sale proceeds, terminated their relationship with Pinnacle Financial immediately upon learning of the enhanced scrutiny protocol and character assessment investigation. The regulatory action confirmed their concerns about professional integrity and character standards that distinguished legitimate wealth management services from advisors who couldn't maintain basic family relationship respect and elderly dignity protection. The institutional response to the enhanced scrutiny protocol revealed the systematic nature of regulatory accountability and the professional consequences that accompanied character standards violations in the wealth management industry. Pinnacle Financial's senior management received notification of the regulatory investigation at 8:55 a.m. through secure communication channels that required immediate response, comprehensive cooperation, and detailed explanation of character assessment findings and compliance review procedure. The firm's compliance department, led by Chief Compliance Officer Jennifer Walsh, was required to provide comprehensive documentation of Michael's professional conduct, systematic analysis of client relationship management and business practices, detailed review of family relationship standards and character evaluation, and complete cooperation with regulatory investigation that could determine the firm's continued operation and industry participation. The compliance review required substantial resources and management attention that disrupted normal business operations and client service. The legal consultation that Pinnacle Financial immediately retained included Austin-based securities law firm Morrison, Sterling & Associates, which specialized in regulatory defense and compliance investigation response for wealth management firms facing federal oversight and enforcement action. The legal fees that began accumulating immediately exceeded $2,500 per hour for partner-level representation and comprehensive regulatory defense that could extend for months, while affecting firm profitability and business operation. The insurance notification that the firm was required to provide included disclosure to their professional liability insurance carrier regarding potential character violations and regulatory enforcement that could result in client claims, regulatory penalty, and business interruption that affected insurance coverage and premium calculations. The insurance implications included potential policy cancellation, premium increases, and coverage limitations that could affect the firm's financial security and business continuation capability. But perhaps the most significant institutional consequence was the effect on firm reputation and industry standing that distinguished successful wealth management practices from those struggling with regulatory complications and character assessment investigation. The enhanced scrutiny protocol became public information through regulatory filing requirements, industry notification systems, and professional network communications that affected Pinnacle Financial's ability to attract new clients, retain existing relationships, and maintain competitive positioning in Austin's wealth management market. The personal financial consequences that Michael and Rachel experienced, beginning at 9:30 a.m., revealed the systematic relationship between professional conduct and personal financial security that many wealth management professionals never fully understood until their character violations triggered regulatory action and compliance investigation. The enhanced scrutiny protocol included implementation of personal account monitoring that tracked their financial activities for evidence of additional character violations or professional misconduct that could justify expanded enforcement action. Michael's personal banking relationships with Austin National Bank, where he maintained checking and savings accounts, totaling approximately $340,000, came under regulatory scrutiny that required comprehensive documentation of income sources, expense patterns, and financial management practices that demonstrated character and professional qualification for wealth management industry participation. The account monitoring included automatic flagging of unusual transactions, mandatory reporting of large withdrawals or transfers, and systematic analysis of spending patterns that could indicate character issues or professional conduct violation. The mortgage account for their $1.8 million Westlake Hills home, held with Texas Regional Mortgage Company, received notification of the enhanced scrutiny protocol and regulatory investigation that could affect their credit qualification and loan status. The mortgage company was required to implement enhanced monitoring of payment history, insurance compliance, and property value protection that ensured loan security during regulatory investigation and potential enforcement action that could affect borrower income and financial stability. Rachel's personal credit accounts, including credit cards with combined limits exceeding $85,000, and a personal line of credit secured by their home, came under compliance monitoring that tracked spending patterns for evidence of financial stress or character issues that could indicate additional regulatory concern. The credit monitoring included automatic reporting of payment delays, unusual spending patterns, and debt accumulation that could suggest financial management problems or character standards violation. But perhaps the most immediate personal consequence was the effect on their luxury lifestyle and social activities that had been the foundation of Rachel's image management strategy and professional networking approach. The enhanced scrutiny protocol included restrictions on business entertainment expenses, limitations on client development activity, and compliance monitoring of lifestyle presentation that could affect their professional credibility and social positioning throughout Austin's wealth management and high society community. The client exodus that began by 10:15 a.m. represented the systematic collapse of Michael's wealth management practice and the destruction of professional relationships that had taken years to develop and maintain. The mandatory client notifications regarding regulatory investigation and character assessment had triggered immediate concern among high-net-worth families who could not afford to maintain relationships with wealth management professionals facing federal oversight and compliance enforcement. The Pemberton family, who maintained $8.5 million in managed assets with Pinnacle Financial, scheduled an emergency consultation with alternative wealth management firms following receipt of regulatory disclosure notification. The family's patriarch, retired energy executive Thomas Pemberton, expressed particular concern about elderly treatment violations and family relationship exploitation that suggested character issues incompatible with multi-generational wealth management and family legacy planning responsibility. The Rodriguez family, whose $6.2 million investment portfolio had been managed by Michael for 3 years, initiated immediate asset transfer procedures to Morgan Stanley Private Wealth Management following notification of the enhanced scrutiny protocol. The family's decision reflected their requirement for wealth management professionals who demonstrated the highest character standards and family relationship integrity that distinguished legitimate advisory services from those facing regulatory investigation and compliance enforcement. The Chen family, who had entrusted Michael with managing $9.8 million in technology company sale proceeds, terminated their advisory relationship and began legal consultation regarding potential fiduciary duty violations and character standards failures that could have affected their investment management and financial planning service. The family's legal review included evaluation of damages and professional responsibility issues that could result in client claims and regulatory penalties. Throughout the morning, additional client families initiated asset transfer procedures, canceled scheduled consultation, and began evaluating alternative wealth management options that provided the professional integrity and character standards that distinguished premier advisory services from those struggling with regulatory complications and federal oversight. The systematic client exodus represented immediate loss of management fees exceeding $180,000 annually and potential loss of relationships representing over $150 million in managed assets. The business development pipeline that Michael had cultivated through months of networking and relation building collapsed as prospective clients learned of the regulatory investigation and character assessment protocols that questioned his qualification for wealth management industry participation. The lost opportunities included potential relationships representing over $200 million in assets and annual fees that could have exceeded $2 million, while establishing his reputation as one of Austin's premier wealth management professionals. The confrontation that would change everything occurred at 11:47 a.m., when Michael's panicked phone call reached me in the spare closet, where I had been monitoring the systematic implementation of consequences and regulatory enforcement that demonstrated the true relationship between family respect and professional security. The desperation in his voice revealed his sudden understanding that his comfortable assumptions about elderly relatives and family relationships had been catastrophically wrong. "Mom, something incredible is happening at the firm," Michael announced with the kind of professional emergency language that revealed immediate understanding of career-threatening implications. "We're under some kind of federal investigation for character violations and professional conduct issues. The regulatory authorities are reviewing everything: my licenses, client relationships, business practices, even personal conduct and family management. They're saying something about elderly treatment standards and family relationship requirements for wealth management professionals." The conversation that followed revealed Michael's growing recognition that the systematic elderly dismissal that he and Rachel had implemented might be connected to the regulatory catastrophe that was destroying his professional career and financial security. "The compliance officers are asking detailed questions about family relationships, elderly care responsibilities, and character standards that demonstrate qualification for consumer protection duty." He continued with obvious confusion about the relationship between family conduct and professional consequences. "They want comprehensive documentation of how we treat elderly family members, whether we demonstrate respect and dignity in family relations, and whether our personal conduct meets the character standards required for managing client assets and maintaining consumer trust," Michael explained, while reviewing the regulatory documentation and investigation requirements that would determine his continued employment and industry participation. "The moment of revelation came when I calmly explained the relationship between his systematic elderly dismissal and the federal banking oversight systems that governed wealth management industry participation and professional conduct." "Michael, the regulatory investigation isn't random or unexplained," I said with the measured authority of someone who had spent 41 years developing the compliance protocols and character assessment standards that were being applied to his situation. "The enhanced scrutiny protocol that's affecting Pinnacle Financial was initiated based on comprehensive documentation of systematic elderly dismissal, family relationship and character standards violations that demonstrate disqualification for wealth management industry participation and consumer protection responsibility." I continued while accessing the regulatory files and investigation documentation that detailed their violations and justified enforcement action. The silence that followed was the sound of Michael's comfortable assumptions about family relationships, elderly treatment, and professional consequences, crashing into the reality of regulatory accountability and character standards enforcement. The systematic dismissal that he and Rachel had celebrated as successful business strategy had become documented evidence of character violations that justified federal banking oversight and compliance investigation. "The federal banking compliance systems that are investigating your character standards weren't developed by random bureaucrats, Michael," I explained with growing satisfaction about the educational opportunity that his systematic cruelty had created. "The protocols for evaluating elderly treatment, family relationship management, and professional conduct qualification were designed and implemented by the Chief Compliance Auditor for Regional Banking Oversight at the Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas, a position that I held for over 20 years." The revelation that followed transformed Michael's understanding of power dynamics, family relationships, and the true cost of systematic elderly dismissal. The Harrison Institute for Federal Banking Compliance, which developed the character assessment protocols being applied to your situation, operates from the modest Austin home where you refused to allow me proper living arrangements and family respect, I continued while reviewing the comprehensive documentation of their violations and regulatory consequences. The E.M. Sterling consultation work that shaped federal banking policy and compliance standards throughout North America represents 41 years of expertise in regulatory oversight and character assessment that distinguished legitimate financial professionals from those whose conduct violated federal standards and consumer protection requirements. I explained with the authority of someone whose professional recognition had influenced banking regulation worldwide. The
The enhanced scrutiny protocol that's destroying your wealth management practice implements compliance standards and character assessment procedures that I personally developed to protect consumers from financial professionals who couldn't maintain basic human dignity and family relationship respect. I continued while accessing the automated systems that were coordinating regulatory enforcement and compliance investigation throughout multiple agencies and jurisdictions. The comprehensive explanation that I provided included detailed description of the federal banking oversight systems that monitored wealth management professionals, the character assessment protocols that evaluated family relationship management, and elderly treatment standards, the regulatory enforcement capabilities that could affect professional licenses and industry participation, and the systematic consequences that resulted from character violations and professional conduct failure. Throughout the afternoon, the systematic destruction of Michael and Rachel's professional and personal security continued, as additional regulatory agencies implemented coordinated enforcement, action, and compliance investigation. The Securities and Exchange Commission initiated formal investigation of potential fiduciary duty violations and character standards failures that could result in professional sanctions and client restitution requirements that affected their financial stability and industry participation. The Texas State Securities Board implemented enhanced supervision requirements that restricted Michael's professional activities, required comprehensive reporting of all client interactions and business decisions, and mandated character assessment counseling that addressed elderly treatment standards and family relationship management that distinguished qualified wealth management professionals from those facing regulatory enforcement and compliance violations. The Financial Industry Regulatory Authority issued formal notification of character assessment investigation that could result in professional suspension, mandatory retraining requirement, and permanent industry disqualification if character violations and elderly treatment failures were substantiated through regulatory investigation and enforcement proceeding. The FINRA investigation included comprehensive review of professional conduct, client relationship management, and family character standards that determined qualification for consumer protection responsibilities. The Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation implemented account monitoring protocol that tracked Michael and Rachel's personal financial activities for evidence of additional character violations or professional misconduct that could justify expanded regulatory enforcement and compliance investigation. The monitoring included systematic analysis of spending patterns, financial management practices, and lifestyle choices that demonstrated character standards and professional qualification for banking industry participation. By 3:30 p.m., the combined effect of multi-agency regulatory enforcement had effectively terminated Michael's wealth management career and eliminated their access to the luxury lifestyle and professional advancement opportunities that had motivated their systematic elderly dismissal and family relationship. The character violations that they had implemented, through professional consultation and strategic planning, had generated comprehensive regulatory consequences that affected every aspect of their financial security and social position. The personal reckoning that occurred throughout the evening of November 1st revealed the true cost of systematic elderly dismissal and the devastating consequences of prioritizing business advancement over family loyalty and human dignity. Rachel's immediate response to the regulatory catastrophe included desperate attempts to blame external factors, deny responsibility for character violations, and minimize the significance of elderly treatment standards that had triggered federal banking oversight and compliance enforcement. This is completely unfair and disproportionate to any mistakes we might have made in family relationship management, Rachel announced during their emergency consultation with securities law attorneys, who were charging $2,500 per hour for regulatory defense and compliance investigation response. We were just trying to maintain professional image and business development that required sophisticated presentation and lifestyle management. The legal consultation that continued throughout the evening included detailed review of the character assessment documentation, systematic analysis of regulatory enforcement options and defense strategies, and comprehensive evaluation of the evidence supporting elderly treatment violations and family relationship exploitation that had justified federal banking oversight and compliance investigation. The attorney's assessment included warning that the documentation was comprehensive and the regulatory consequences were appropriate for the character violations that had been systematically implemented. Michael's response to the regulatory catastrophe revealed his growing understanding that the elderly mother he had dismissed and relegated to storage space possessed professional authority and federal connections that could determine his career survival and financial security. I never understood that family relationship management and elderly treatment were evaluated by regulatory agencies as character standards that affected professional qualification, he admitted while reviewing the compliance documentation and investigation requirements. The business consultation that Rachel and I received about image management and family relationship optimization never mentioned that elderly treatment and dignity respect were regulated as professional conduct standards that could affect wealth management industry participants. Michael continued with obvious recognition that their systematic planning had been based on incomplete understanding of regulatory requirements and character assessment protocol. The conversation that extended throughout the evening included Michael's detailed questions about the relationship between family conduct and professional consequences, the federal banking oversight systems that monitored character standards, and the regulatory enforcement capabilities that could affect his continued employment and industry participation. The educational discussion revealed his complete ignorance of the compliance framework and character assessment protocols that governed wealth management professionals and distinguished legitimate advisory services from those facing regulatory enforcement. The negotiation process that began on November 2 involved comprehensive discussion of the character violation, evidence, regulatory enforcement options, and potential resolution procedures that could enable professional rehabilitation and compliance restoration. The negotiation required acknowledgement of systematic elderly dismissal, acceptance of responsibility for character standards violations, and commitment to comprehensive behavior modification that demonstrated genuine understanding of family relationship requirements and elderly dignity protection. The compliance restoration program that I designed for Michael and Rachel included mandatory character assessment, counseling, systematic education about elderly treatment standards and family relationship management, comprehensive community service focusing on elderly advocacy and dignity protection, and ongoing regulatory monitoring that verified behavior modification and character development. The program required 12 months of intensive compliance oversight and character development that addressed the systematic violations that had triggered federal banking enforcement. The financial restitution requirements included establishment of an elderly dignity protection fund that supported community organizations focused on elderly advocacy and abuse prevention, comprehensive payment of regulatory investigation costs and enforcement expenses, and ongoing financial support for elderly care organizations that demonstrated commitment to dignity protection and family relationship respect. The restitution reflected the seriousness of character violations and the community impact of systematic elderly dismissal and family exploitation. The professional rehabilitation program included comprehensive training in character standards and elderly treatment requirements, mandatory supervision by compliance professionals who specialized in character development and family relationship management, and gradual restoration of professional privileges based on demonstrated behavior modification and character improvement. The rehabilitation process required genuine commitment to personal change, rather than superficial compliance with regulatory requirements. But perhaps the most important aspect of the resolution was the establishment of new living arrangements that demonstrated respect for elderly dignity and family relationship integrity. The program required providing comfortable, dignified housing that met elderly care standards, ensuring family involvement and social engagement that promoted mental and physical health, and implementing family relationship management that prioritized elderly respect over business convenience and professional advancement.
6 months after the November 1st regulatory intervention, the transformation, and Michael and Rachel's understanding of family relationships, elderly respect and character standards, had exceeded even my expectations for genuine behavior modification and personal growth. The compliance program that they had completed included comprehensive education about elderly dignity protection, systematic development of family relationship management skills, and ongoing commitment to community service that demonstrated authentic character change, rather than superficial regulatory compliance. Michael's new position as Senior Compliance Officer at Austin Community Bank annually, while focusing on character standards development and elderly protection advocacy, reflected his transformed understanding of professional priorities and the importance of family relationship integrity and financial services career development. His work included training bank employees about elderly dignity protection, developing community outreach programs for senior citizens, and ensuring that banking services met the highest standards for elderly customer respect and accommodation. Rachel's role as Community Outreach Coordinator for the Austin Area Agency on Aging, earning $52,000 annually, while coordinating elderly advocacy programs and dignity protection services, demonstrated her commitment to understanding and addressing the systematic elderly dismissal and family exploitation that had characterized their previous approach to family relationship management. Her work included developing educational programs about elderly rights and dignity protection, coordinating community resources for senior citizens, and ensuring that elderly community members received the respect and support that distinguished caring communities from those that tolerated elderly marginalization. Their new residence, a comfortable but modest apartment in central Austin that cost Portland's $400 monthly, reflected their transformed priorities and their commitment to living within means that enabled substantial financial support for elderly advocacy organizations and community service programs. The simple furnishings and traditional family activities that characterized their current lifestyle demonstrated genuine appreciation for family relationships and elderly wisdom that distinguished authentic character change from superficial behavioral modification. The guest room that they had prepared for my visits included comfortable accommodations, accessible features that addressed elderly mobility needs, and family spaces that encouraged social interaction and mutual respect rather than storage and isolation that had characterized their previous approach to elderly accommodation. The preparation demonstrated their understanding that elderly family members deserved dignity, comfort, and inclusion, rather than minimal accommodation and systematic dismissal. The college scholarship program that Michael and Rachel established for students pursuing elderly advocacy and family relationship studies included comprehensive education about dignity protection, character development, and the importance of family loyalty and generational respect in professional and personal success. The scholarship required students to demonstrate both academic achievement and community service that supported elderly dignity protection and family relationship integrity throughout their educational and career development. The Harrison Institute for Federal Banking Compliance expanded its curriculum to include comprehensive training in family relationship management, elderly treatment standards, and character assessment protocols that ensured banking professionals understood the relationship between personal conduct and professional qualification. The expansion reflected recognition that character standards and family relationship integrity were fundamental requirements for consumer protection responsibilities and financial industry participation. The federal banking oversight systems that I had developed continued expanding internationally, with banking authorities throughout Europe, Asia, and South America implementing character assessment protocols and elderly dignity protection standards that distinguished legitimate financial professionals from those whose personal conduct violated consumer protection requirements and community trust standards. The global implementation reflected growing recognition that character standards and family relationship integrity were essential foundations for effective banking regulation and consumer protection. But perhaps the most important legacy of this experience was the broader understanding throughout the wealth management industry that professional success and financial advancement required character integrity and family relationship respect that demonstrated qualification for consumer protection responsibilities and community trust. The systematic consequences that Michael and Rachel had experienced became a cautionary example that influenced professional development and character standards throughout the financial services industry. The monthly family dinners that we now shared included discussion of regulatory development, character standards education, and ongoing commitment to elderly advocacy and dignity protection that ensured our family relationships reflected the values and integrity that distinguished responsible family management from systematic exploitation and dismissal. The conversations included planning for continued community service, professional development that supported elderly advocacy, and family legacy building that honored generational wisdom and traditional values. As I reflected on the journey from systematic elderly dismissal to family relationship restoration, I understood that the most important lesson wasn't about regulatory power or professional consequence, but about the fundamental importance of character integrity and family loyalty that created the foundation for meaningful success and authentic happiness. The comfortable lifestyle and professional advancement that Michael and Rachel had achieved through systematic elderly dismissal had been revealed as temporary benefits that couldn't survive contact with character assessment and regulatory accountability. The true wealth that our family had discovered through this experience included mutual respect, generational wisdom sharing, and commitment to elderly dignity protection that created lasting satisfaction and authentic success rather than superficial achievements that required family exploitation and character violation. The regulatory intervention that had initially appeared devastating had become the catalyst for personal growth and family relationship development that distinguished genuine prosperity from temporary financial advancement built on character compromise and family disrespect. Remember, federal banking authority and regulatory power aren't guaranteed family privileges. They're earned recognition of character integrity and family loyalty that creates the foundation for professional credibility and community contribution. The spare closet that taught Michael and Rachel about elderly dignity became the beginning of authentic family relationships and genuine appreciation for the elderly wisdom that distinguished lasting achievement from temporary advancement, built on systematic dismissal of generational respect and traditional family values. The systematic cruelty that they had disguised as business necessity had been transformed into character development and community service that created meaningful contribution and authentic success rather than superficial lifestyle presentation and professional advancement that required family exploitation and elder marginalization. The federal banking systems that had documented their violations and implemented comprehensive consequences had become the foundation for character education and family relationship restoration that honored elderly wisdom and traditional values, while creating opportunities for genuine prosperity and community contribution that distinguished responsible family management from systematic exploitation disguised as business strategy and professional advancement. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.